Hello. Welcome to the BWI Live Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, Nate Bauer, and Sean Fitz with me. For the first time in a week. 1 week ago today, we did our live show post-Blue-White game. Thankfully, we got that one in. And then what happened was the three of us did not have power for varying lengths of the rest of the week. Nate was the lucky one, and his came on like Wednesday night. I want to say, Nate. I was not able to do the show, and I kind of control things from this end. I think technically we could have done a show if I wanted to force Greg and Ryan, who live in Harrisburg, to do the show, but it just felt like a real bad call to do that. So here we are. We're back. The lights are on. Everyone's happy. It has been raining ever since in State College, but that's pretty par for the course. So, gentlemen, how are you this week? And what's going on in your world since the last time we talked, Nate Bauer?
I mean, it is spectacular this morning. So let's hurry this up so I can go sit outside and take in the nature.
Fitz, what's going on with you?
Yeah, I just on a lengthy dog walk, so it's nice out right now. We'll take it as long as we can get it. The storms have been, it's like Florida around here. It's just like these massive storms just come through, and then all of a sudden it's great. So
yeah,
but we're glad to be back. I saw somebody was like, "Hey, Ryan's in Harrisburg. He should be able to do the show by himself." And I sent that to Ryan. I was like, "Yeah, you should do that." But you've seen it enough of Ryan if you're on the channel, because Penn State's gotten 2 commits in the last I will just call it the last week. So there has been content. We missed you, but we're glad we're back. This is what we do. This is the spring new renewal and all that kind of jazz and things.
Yeah. Sometimes you got to unplug it and plug it back in for a couple minutes and then see what happens. Coming up on the show today, Fitz talked about that. We're going to be talking about recruiting news during Fitz's recruiting update, including the first official visit of the season, as well as those linebacker commits. We've got some interesting news that we'll get to here in just 1 second from Penn State football, a new initiative with NIL. We also have one of the things I'm excited for, because I think it's going to be an absolute train wreck, is we're going to be doing the vibes check again with Nate and with Fitz. I don't think they've really played the game yet so far, but at the end of the show, I'm going to throw out some topics, and I'm just going to ask them good vibes, bad vibes. They are reporters, so they want to give you the facts and information and detailed. We're going to try and just get from the gut, from the heart, from the midsection here, what they're thinking about with some Penn State football topics. We'll see how that goes a little bit later. But first, we do have to get to something that Nate wrote about earlier yesterday, I believe, at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. The latest news from Penn State football is that they are trying to find a new way to deliver money to the program and also have you be a part of the Penn State football program in a very literal sense. So, Nate, can you tell us what's going on with Penn State's newest initiative?
You're telling me that we're not starting with the European 7-foot basketball commitment?
No.
That's fair. That's fair. Because I was gonna make a joke. I don't know anything about him, so proceed. Yeah. What did they do yesterday? Yesterday, Penn State launched effectively a seat naming opportunity. Right? You can put your name on a plaque that goes on the back of the seats in Lasch Building, in the Lasch auditorium. And, it's very expensive to do so, but is a tax deductible opportunity for Penn State fans. So look, like this one's towards the Excellence Fund, which is where Penn State is really urging its internal donations to go, is to this Excellence Fund. It funds scholarships, right? It funds support for student athletes, Penn State football student athletes. But look, the point here is the same as it's been, which is it is the duty of Pat Kraft and his staff and really internally even Penn State football staff, to maximize and squeeze every ounce of juice that they possibly can in a good way.
Yeah.
Right. Like in a you don't want to be I don't know if you ever see like Japanese basketball leagues, like their jerseys have right. Like,
okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I see where you're going.
Like,
yeah.
so you you don't want to do that necessarily.
Right.
But if you can create worthwhile opportunities, things that connect fans to the program and make them feel a part of the program. Look, these are not cheap. I looked up, what the offerings are. It is $10,000 annually.
Yeah.
Right. They're asking for an annual donation of $10,000 for the front row. The rows 2 and 3 are $5,000, and rows 4 through 7 are $2,500 a piece. And again, that's an annual donation. So these are not for the faint of heart. But they do put you literally, your name, right, your family's name in the room where Penn State football, kind of comes together as a family.
Yeah, and where you see all those videos and all those guest speakers and things like that. That you kind of talked about one aspect of this that I found interesting. They mentioned specifically this is for scholarships. The thing I had understood that you kind of outlined is that all the money goes into one pot. So I guess, is that a change, or is this kind of just saying the same thing?
It's discretionary.
Okay.
And that's kind of the point is you look, people can direct the money as they see fit. And, I think Penn State has traditionally, this bears itself out over time, has done very well. Penn State athletics has done very well in raising funds for the academic side of things, right? As opposed to NIL, which was met with a thud, right? And that's ingrained in the culture. I mean, these guys have talked about it. Pat Kraft has talked about it. James Franklin has talked about it. Culturally, it was a shock to the system to get Penn State fans excited about paying players, and not only paying players, but paying them well, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that onus has shifted with the pending House settlement, right? Look, it doesn't matter whether the House settlement is approved or not. Schools and programs are going to pay college athletes no matter what. They're like, right. That's happening is internally they're going to pay it. Well, okay. That money might come out of your budget from one pot, but you now have an opportunity to fill another pot, which is going from 85 scholarships, which were fully funded, to 105 scholarships, right? Or more scholarships, you name it.
So the Sean Fitz long snapper fund would be one that might crop up in the future.
100%. So there are opportunities abound. And that's one of them. That's their latest.
So a lot of this off the top of the show here are news, and some of the things coming out are very Nate centric, because he's been doing a great job this week writing over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, which is the basis of what we talk about here, is just what they've written. And if you want to go over there and get the full effect, all the information, including Fitz's recruiting information, Ryan's recruiting information, Nate's basketball stuff when he gets more about the 7'1" center or 7-foot center from Yugoslavia or wherever it might be.
Whoa, Croatia.
Stop I did not know. I just put out a fictitious country. I could have called it well, anyway. What I'm trying to say is you should subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. That'd be a great idea for you, is to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com and get the information first thing, and then you can get the nuance and the detail and the context of my follow-up questions and my hypotheticals here on the show as I plumb the depths of their knowledge for those maybe some context clues. But the reporting, the information, the sourcing, all the great stuff, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, just $1 for the first week of access, and you can decide if you want to join us for the year or not. I highly suggest that you should check that out. We also have our winners from last week, which I planned on talking about this all week. I got one opportunity to announce it. So we did a giveaway during spring football for 5 people. I've gotten in contact with just a couple of them, including, I believe, Brian and the Whitaker family have gotten in contact with me. But Kyle Whitmoyer, David Loaf, Omar Leverett, you are all winners. You've won a year subscription to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So please email me at bluewhiteillustrated@gmail.com. Let me not stumble over that. bluewhiteillustrated@gmail.com to get in contact with me, and then we'll get you set up for your yearly subscription to the site for the next year. Fitz, I want to get you here in the conversation. And I want to talk about something that I know that we all enjoy here on the show, and that it's beer. So tell us about Anti-Fragile. You got the shirt on, so it's perfect.
Yes, it was perfectly sitting right on top of the pile of laundry that I had to fold. So I thought it worked well for our Tuesday show. Anti-Fragile, somebody asked about it in the chat. How did they do over the break? I saw they had a cash bar. They were going candlelight, but there was still beer flowing. So we appreciate their steadfastness in these trying times. So best beer in State College. The cheesesteaks are back. They are phenomenal. I had one last week. It was pretty great. Got one for my dad. And if it's Bill Fitz approved, then it's good. No, Anti-Fragile is doing some great stuff right now. As Nate mentioned before I got on the show last week, we had a little get together for my wife's birthday last weekend. We rented the upstairs or reserved the upstairs, and pretty much had the whole place to ourselves on Sunday afternoon after Blue White game. After the town cleared out, we took over, and it was a great time. So we appreciate them, not just on the sponsor level, but on the human level, on the people level. We like good people, and they support our people. So if you could support them as well, that'd be great. Go to them, tell them you heard about it on Blue White. You're going to enjoy what you had, whether it's beer, mixed drinks with Pennsylvania spirits, kombucha, cheesesteaks, good times. Nate, I believe they have Gatorade for the kids as well. Is that what you guys got into?
They sure
wild times. No, it's a really great spot downtown, and they made it through the storm as well. So happy to get down there when we get down there once again.
And as always, if you go, make sure you say that you came from the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, from BWI Live. Always appreciate when you support the people that support us, and also let them know that you're coming from. I was talking to a friend who I hadn't seen in a very long time, and she was telling me her sister is a big fan of the show, and she goes to Anti-Fragile when she comes into town. Or I think she's going to go to Anti-Fragile when she comes into town. So, Kara, if you're listening, make sure you let them know that you heard it from us. So the other thing we wanted to talk about to start off the show today, Nate, your buzzworthy articles always create a buzz over at the site.
Hate you both.
And of course, when you combine that with wide receivers, it was quite the conversation, quite the topic over on the site. So what did you find when examining that position in the post Blue-White spring football landscape?
Yeah, let's clarify here, right? This isn't rocket science, right? I didn't go so far into it that it's I made 1 point. Well, 2 points. First point being, you can't have James Franklin saying what he said in the days leading into the Orange Bowl about their development within that room, right? Largely pointing to Omari Evans and Trey Wallace, and have that be right. Like, that can't exist in a world where on the backside of their transfers, 12 days later, it's a nothing burger, right? Like, those two things can't coexist. It can't. So it has to be somewhere in between, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it is a loss to have lost those guys. That said, the production and the second point that I think is valid and worthy of consideration is that when you combine Trey and Omari being gone with Julian Fleming being gone, and then put up the production, the numbers of the three that they've brought in, so Trevor Pena, Kyron Hudson, and Devontae Ross, they get lapped. Like, big time. Right?
Devontae Ross, I believe, had more yards than the three combined just by himself, I want to say. He had 1,000 yards, and then the other three, I think, had 700 maybe?
Yeah. It's not you can't do the the crossover, right? The reciprocity law of
transitive property of X.
Yeah. Just because this happened at Troy doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen at Penn State. But there were enough signs and enough positivity for Penn State to feel good about coming out of the spring that when you add Pena to the mix, it feels like an upward trend. It's just a matter of finding a balance, I think, in expectations of who and what these guys are, because the things that James Franklin said after the Blue-White game, I think, still apply here. which are the exact same things he said last year and the same thing he said 2 years ago, which is the second receiver is competing with the second tight end, right? And the second tight end is competing with the second running back, right? The running backs are going to be an active part in the passing game. Yeah. How they distribute passing the football is going to be up for grabs, literally based on who should get the ball, who are your best options to get the ball. It's just a matter of, on the bottom side, on the floor side of this, it appears as though it's a higher floor than maybe what it was last year, right? They shouldn't find themselves in those situations where they don't have any catches at all. Is the then metric a higher floor, but maybe a lower ceiling? Is that fair, or do you think that the ceiling? Because that's, I think, part of what Nate is saying is Trey Wallace and Amari Evans are supremely talented athletes at the position. Is that how you would view it? And then how do you, I guess, view kind of the same question of what's your view of the post blue-white receiver situation after the game, after spring football, and heading now with Trevor Pena being integrated into the offense after all that stuff?
Yeah, I still think the best of what Trey and Omari could have been is probably higher. That said, you talk about the ceiling. Was open air at that point. They never got there. Like that was one of those things where you kind of expected it to keep happening. And, that's one of the reasons Evans got onto the field as a freshman, because you saw what he could provide was that speed that very, very few people have. We have a lot of people that claim to be 4.3, season 4.3. There are situations where the solid floor is going to get you where you need to be. Notre Dame's receivers weren't any good last year. They were not. That was the conversation going into the semifinal. By the way, national semifinal matchup. These two teams have receivers that aren't good, and Notre Dame's receivers stepped up in a way that was good enough. Like, they weren't Jeremiah Smith, they were not the top guys in the country, but they gave you enough to diversify your offense in a situation where they needed the passing game to work when they were down 10 in the first half. Penn State didn't have that. Penn State had all upside. Great, didn't hit it. That was the worry. I think you, especially with a guy like Kyron Hudson, you've got a situation right now where you've got a pretty good idea of what he's going to be. Does that cap you? Probably. But at this point, you'll take a cap over whatever we saw at the end of last season, right? I mean, that's kind of where you're at with that. So, and Pena, I'm really curious to see how he fits in and what he looks like, because sometimes guys walk in and they are like Owen Wafel came in, did not play at Michigan last year as a freshman, didn't even get into a game, I believe, as a freshman. All of a sudden, it seems like he might be a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Dante Cephas seemed like he was going to be a pretty good player. Then he got here. He wasn't. Malik McLean, same way. I mean, you're just not sure what happens until they get here. And that's why I kind of hold out on him. What I do like about him is he makes the plays that he's supposed to make. And I think that's really what they're looking for. Like, you can talk about upside all day, but just go out and make the basic plays. Yeah. It's kind of where we're at right now, right?
Yeah. Be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And so I talked to Nate. You have a thought. Go ahead.
Just one question for you guys, just that I found fascinating, because I don't think I knew this before him. Do you guys know how many targets Omari and Trey got in that national semifinal game?
Was it 8 combined, maybe? Something like that?
It was 5.
5? Oh, I was way over the top.
And so, right, the glaring stat of, no catch, right? There were no catches. How is it possible that nobody caught a pass from the receiving group? And it's like, well, they didn't have the ball thrown to them, really.
Yeah.
And
a lot of those were early in the game too. I felt like they tried to establish Trey Wallace at the beginning of the game, and it wasn't working. So they pivoted, and that, that game in particular, I was having a conversation, following up on your article, and people were talking about that final throw to Amari Evans and the route he ran and how he was not where he was supposed to be. Part of that was also the fact that Notre Dame knew what was coming. The defense expertly predicted where the receivers were trying to go, where the ball was trying to go initially, and where the receivers were trying to get to based on the offense. So I think that there is a conversation about the offense evolving in general, the passing game evolving in general, along with these players. Being in year 2 is a big step forward for this. I think we kind of, because there were no obvious mental errors of tons of false starts or guys running the wrong routes. It was pretty obvious in 2023 when Dante Cephas did not know where he was supposed to be on a route. There was much less of that last year. And I think we kind of just gloss over the fact it was a new offense and how some of those first year integration things maybe will be better this year as opposed to last year. And that's something, Fitz, I want to ask you about. Talked to Andy Kotelnicki during spring football. And in my mind, I'm thinking what happens is you sit down after the year, you watch all the film, you already know what happened if you're the offensive coordinator, and now you're designing your new offense. You're making all the changes in like February. He's saying like we're developing the offense during spring football, seeing what guys are good at, seeing what new combinations will bear out. And now you've got adding essentially a new player into the mix where Trevor Pena isn't coming here to be a backup. So I'm penciling him in as a starter, fair or not. How much of this is unwritten in your mind? How much of this is developing between now and the start of the season where maybe we're having conversations that are not even going to hit the target because the target's moving when it comes to the passing game specifically?
What did Andy do with tight ends at Kansas, T. Frank?
Selectively plays, shot plays, blocking, not a whole lot.
Great. And then he got here. He saw Tyler Warren in the spring, and that developed into the centerpiece of the offense, right?
Yeah.
And he's a smart guy. Like, he's going to understand what's there and, more importantly, what's not. And I think that that's part of what we saw in the national semifinal. And I think that that's what you're going to continue to see here. We saw a lot of throwing to, well, first off, we saw a lot of 11 personnel because Luke Reynolds was out, Andrew Olish was out.
Yep.
Rappelier's out. You know, they didn't have the tight ends in the blue-white game. So 11 personnel, throw it to the wide receivers. I don't know that that's what it's going to look like come fall, but I think there's more of that and a little bit more confidence there. And then you add Pena to the mix, you see what you've got there. So yes, I can make an argument for that. But I think it's going to be, as Nate said, like we continue to sort of gloss over the running game and how big of a part those running backs are going to be. And I'm not just saying that to bait him into saying something about how great Nick Singleton is, but Katron improved as a receiver last year. I was just sitting here when Nate was talking earlier, and I was just smiling to myself thinking, man, people are going to get so sick of the shovel pass. Like I think it's going to be a part of the offense that eventually it's just going to be like, well, God, guys, come on, do something else here. But if you have that kind of talent, you work with that kind of talent. So I think that Kotelnicki, as the person that he is, has adapted offenses before, and he will continue to adapt the offense. This time, I don't think it's going to be wide receiver focused. I don't think it's going to be one of those things where you brought in 3 guys from the portal and they're all going to catch 60 balls like Pena and his boys did at Syracuse last year. That's not going to be the offense, but they're going to have the opportunity to make that work. And I also think that if you have Pena, you have Ross, you have 2 guys that can be a threat out of the slot. And I think they sorely missed that last year. They
consistent threats, not just dial it up.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of that was the personnel groupings that they used, where essentially a tight end was a slot man, and they had some success with that with Dinkins and with Reynolds, which I think Reynolds will be there again this year. But at the same time, like if you have a threat on one side of the slot, it does open some things up for the tight end, for the X on the other side. So you've got some things to work with there in a more spread out kind of manner. And I think it'll be fine. I don't think it's, like I said, I think they're capped in what they can do in the outside passing game, but you need to do enough to get to where you need to be. And they were pretty close to where they need to be without any outside threat last year.
Yeah. And that's a really important point too. They were 1 drive away from the national championship game with all of that in mind. Now they've got another year with most of these players coming back. It's funny. We mentioned the offense, and, we watched the blue-white game. I have a better understanding of what the offense is going to be, at least now. And it's like, I don't know what we should talk about, what sort of like wrinkles they showed at practice are fair game. Like,
well, you look, and there's a question in the chat here about who do you game plan for if you're a defensive coordinator? It's got to be the running backs, right? It's got to be the running game. It's got to be the running backs. And then it's a game of, it's the Princess Bride when they're sitting there with the 2 cups of poison and he's going back and forth. Like that's what coordinators do. They try to outsmart the other one. And they by doing that, maybe they do the off, it just kind of goes back and forth, and all of a sudden kind of falls on its face sometimes. So what you're seeing is Penn State's going to be a run-heavy team. Penn State's going to use those running backs as part of their short passing game as well. Like, it's going to be an extension of the run game there.
Yeah.
And then it's how do you move essentially the pawns, the wide receivers, to put yourself in a position to trap the other team. And that's what it's got to be. It's got to be trickling down from the running backs, not the other way around.
I think you got to have one knight out there. If they're all pawns, you only move one square
chess
at a
with
time.
you. Yeah.
I'm terrible at chess. I just know it's like one thing I could say there. Nate, you got something?
Just one thing, and T. Frank, maybe you have the numbers, and it literally, like, even anecdotally, I don't have it on the top of my head, but I think that Penn State would love to have. This is so stupid. I can't believe I'm saying it. Would love to have more 80-yard touchdowns.
This is a real thing.
They should do that.
This is
why don't they
a
do
real
that?
thing, Nate. This is what Stan Drayton was talking about. This is part of the conversation about the evolution, and maybe we'll get into this later in just like we'll set this up now. Nick Singleton is very good. To be elite, to maximize his ability, he needs to make the unblocked defender miss, the safety in the middle of the field to go 80. If you get a 40-yard run, that's great. But if you deliver a knockout blow so that you don't have a 10-play drive or a 14-play drive, someone needs to start hitting home runs in the offense. I absolutely believe that's a real thing. Katron Allen, an anecdotal stat I found from last year, from the playoffs, of explosive runs, the average yards on just big runs, I think of over 10 yards. Katron Allen had the lowest average yards per run. So like he was getting to 10 and maybe was getting 12. But other teams, when they got to 10, they'd get an average of 25 or something like that. So those big plays are absolutely a part of the offense. And that's where if your run game and your meat and potatoes are the tight ends and the running backs, which are all within 15 yards of the offense, you need somebody hitting those home runs. If it comes to the run game, great. Don't have to worry about the passing game. But that's where the receivers are helpful. And broken record here, talking about the same thing I talked about in February, is if you don't have an element to threaten the defense deep, dropping a safety into the box solves all the gadget problems. You're gonna run a 2 running back set. Great. We'll have an extra safety that's a free man on the backside. You're gonna run RPO or read option. Great. We're gonna flood the underneath zones. We're gonna add an extra man into your run fits, and so we're gonna neutralize some of those problems. And then if you can't take advantage of that open secondary, you're at a neutral position, or you're not taking advantage of what the defense is giving you, which is always what you want to do as the offense. End of T. Frank's tangents. Let's get into the transfer portal. The transfer portal has been a news item in terms of things happening, yet no results as of now from the transfer portal. After it closed, Penn State's bringing in players in the portal. They've brought in some players in the portal. So, Fitz, can you just give us an update on what's been going on with Penn State football since the last time we were here? We talked on Tuesday of last week. I think Muhammad Torrey was actually on campus. So take us through what the plans are for Penn State in this closed, post-spring window.
Yeah, still want a linebacker, still not shy about it, bringing guys in on visits that, typically go a little bit more under the radar. But Muhammad Torrey came in last week, former Rutgers captain. Then he went to Miami. He went to Indiana. I believe he's in North Carolina right now. So that one is not set to be wrapped up early this week. Might be something later in the week, but he wants to check out his options, check out his offers, and see what those things come to. Penn State has some appealing spots for him in the sense that he, would not mind playing with Vabu Torrey, his brother. I don't think that's a decision maker. I don't think that's a deal breaker or anything like that. But it'd be a nice thing to add on top of that. I do think that, from what I understand, Indiana's got the best offer out there right now, if you're talking free agency. So that comes into play here. And Miami has his former one of his favorite coaches, Corey Heatherman's down there as defensive coordinator now. So you've got appealing options at every spot, and Bill Belichick's at North Carolina. So I still think he's kind of taking this more as recruiting than typical portal guys. You typically see portal guys that will wrap things up when they're on campus. This guy, I think he's going to take some visits and then sort of weigh his options and figure out where he stands there. I still think he's high on the list of Penn State's choices there. They checked out the knee. I mean, I'm not gonna tell you it's great, but like I think it's suitable. Like I think there's a situation there where it's you torn 2 ACLs. What do you want to say? Like that he's as good as new. You can't say that. So but I think they feel comfortable with taking him if that's the case at this point. They're also hosting former North Carolina linebacker Amari Campbell for a visit. I would say right now, but he was in town yesterday. I'm not sure if he got out of town this morning or not, but I haven't checked in with anyone about that yet. But that's a situation they're trying to shore up. It's an interesting spot when you talk about linebacker, when you talk about the depth issues that this team can face. And I think, oddly enough, they're all on the defensive side of the ball. Like that's kind of what you're looking at and saying, that's not what we're used to here at Penn State. So still looking out there. I don't think there's much out there in terms of the defensive tackle market, the safety market. Maybe there's some guys, but not so much. But linebacker still seems to be the point of emphasis here for Penn State. And they're looking to shore up what they can depth-wise. And with linebacker, you get special teams play. You get guys that are athletic and can run usually, and that will help with that as well. So suffice to say, I'm not sure which direction this is headed because in the portal, things change so fast. But Penn State had Torre in. He was impressed. They had Campbell in. Still waiting for feedback for that. Gotcha.
Nate, you wrote about the opposite side. So 7 players went into the portal, and now that is now a finite conversation because no more players can go into the transfer portal. You wrote about the players, that the sting factor of the loss versus what is kind of the natural progression of a roster of guys that realize maybe they're not going to play at this level, so they're going to go find a different home, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So who hurts, who doesn't hurt is, I think, how you phrased it in your article. What did you find when you were looking at that analysis of the roster post spring portal window?
Yeah, I thought it was tiered to a certain extent, right? You have guys that my standard of whether it hurts or not, or is effectively is someone who wasn't going to get playing time or would have had much fewer reps going to be elevated as a result. And yeah, there's a few of those out there, right? And or just changing your plans in general. And so I don't know, Fitz, you can correct me on this, but I don't know that Penn State would be looking for a linebacker if Tamir Robinson hadn't left. I kind of doubt it, right? So that's a start. You know, and the second guy, I think, in that real conversation, even if he was going to get beat out, is JB Nelson. Right, as a guy who would have been, he just gives you a lot of options. His, like, the rep counts bear it out that he dwindled kind of down the stretch last year, right? He played more early than he did late. Cooper Cousins was probably going to win that guard spot anyway.
Well, just look at how they used him when there was a role available. It was Cooper Cousins that was filling that role of when you bring on a 6th offensive lineman and you're using jet motions for a 340-pound Bega Ioane.
Yeah. So yes, is it like backup roles? Almost certainly, but also ones that would have been legitimate, real parts of the rotation. And so I think that, you know, as Penn State kind of comes out of the spring, it comes out of the losses of the transfer portal. Those are the two that are most eye-catching, I would say.
And I'll add that this is going on all over college football. You're looking at situations where guys are in, like JB Nelson, getting beat out for a job, but still going to play. But you can also go somewhere. You can be in demand. Like JB Nelson has several, like 8 starts under his belt at Penn State. That carries with something with it. And he went to Kansas State, and I don't know what he's going to make there, but it's probably more than he would have gotten for Penn State because it is cheaper to recruit, develop, and have those guys develop than to bring in just essentially a free agent here. Plus, it's very interesting when you take a look at the schematics of free agency in college football versus the NFL, where you're bringing in guys. And we're having this conversation in the chat right now. We're bringing in guys to be depth. You can do that in the NFL. It's so much tougher to do it in college football because not all of these guys are Chase Daniel. Like, not all these guys understand that they're signing to hold a clipboard or signing to be a fourth linebacker or fifth linebacker or something like that. Where, I mean, Muhammad Toure was a all Big Ten honorable mention last time he played. Like, he already wants to play, and you completely understand that. And until we get to the situation where, you know, there's like contracts and there's things like that, because that's the difference here, right, between the NFL and college, is these guys can leave whenever they want, essentially.
Yep.
And go wherever they want. It's not that cut and dry with the structure, is what I'm trying to say, in the NFL. So I think that's an interesting situation where, you'd love to find. So next year when Drew leaves and there's a quarterback competition, and all of a sudden, you know, you might find yourself short on quarterbacks. You'd love to sign Trace McSorley as a NFL backup, right? You'd love to sign a guy that could come in, hold a clipboard, know the offense, and all that kind of stuff. But that's not how college football is working right now. Maybe they get there eventually, but that's not how college football is going to work.
Can I ask? I want to push back on a conversation we're having here in the portal, about the portal here in the chat. So I just brought up the snaps last year from the top 3 linebackers for Penn State. Kobe King, 748 snaps, third most on the team. Only the safeties, where there was no depth left that they felt secure playing, played more snaps. Tony Rojas, banged up, couldn't leave the game because they didn't have more depth, played 656 snaps. Dom DeLuca played 387. I don't think you want to play Kobe King 750 snaps. So if you're Muhammad Toure, let's just say, because he's the one I've watched, I've done some analysis on him, that's a guy that could co-start at Penn State. If you have a 3-man weave at linebacker, isn't that what you're looking for? So maybe it's not 387 snaps for Dom DeLuca this year. Maybe it's 450. Maybe it's somewhere in that area. Maybe it's 500. Maybe they get closer to a third instead of having one guy and then the 2 others. Is that not a starting role similar to a running back in college football? And is that an easier sell? And is that what they're looking for? Because to me, watching the players they're bringing in, that's more of what they're looking for. And that's a starting role in this defense. They want to play 3 linebackers, even if 2 are on the field at a time.
It's easy to think about that from outside the box, because until it happens and until we see it, people are not going to see it as the potential norm. Like you're talking about, hey, this season's going to go 15 games or 7, 6, whatever it is now. And all of a sudden you're thinking to yourself, as a coach, you're thinking, I need guys that can get us across that long schedule. Well, as a player, you're thinking, I want to play, and I want to play all that I can play. It's not about stretching it out. And maybe, like, I think the smart coaches will get there. It's just, it's so hard to turn that mental page in terms of what is there in front of you to what needs to be in front of you to win a national championship.
Yeah, and so M. Pillion says that that's probably how they're selling it, but other teams don't have the frame it that way. Most likely, they just have a spot. So that's absolutely a great point. I just find it interesting that James Franklin said, "Come and compete for playing time," and that's how they couch everything. I just like the opportunity is. I see the opportunity, and you're right. I'm not the person who has to make a decision whether I'm going to play or not, and whether I'm going to be a starter or not. But I see ample opportunity, especially for a guy like Toure. And again, I've seen him more than Campbell. He can play either role. So if you wanted to be, a Mike linebacker, a Will linebacker, show your versatility for the NFL, play 600 snaps, like that's available. I find the conversation, obviously it's challenging. It's just an interesting way to view the modern situation with linebacker, with football, and kind of the snap sharing in general that this team likes to do.
Fitz, you have a better pulse than I do on this. How many guys who enter the portal are doing so chasing a team national championship?
Very little. Very little. I mean, you're looking at an opportunity for some guys. So I have this, there's kind of like this bubble, right? There's very top, Caleb Downs, very top, that is going to basically be on a team that's going to be in a national title hunt no matter what. And then there's a group of guys that can come in and potentially help that team when, like, it's funny you asked that, because I have Ohio State's portal editions open right now. So guys from Purdue, Rice, North Carolina. Bo Atkinson was one of the latest pickups, defensive lineman from North Carolina. West Virginia, a running back from West Virginia, C.J. Donaldson, thought it was a pretty good player.
Yeah,
and Minnesota, Duquesne, Ball State. You're all over the map here. So I think that there's like the guys that are lower on that list. Yeah, I think they look at that opportunity to win a national championship. But you look at the opportunity to win a national championship and what comes with that exposure to the professional level. Like that is the big thing that everyone's looking for. You're looking for a payday. I saw a great tweet this week that said, hey, your NIL is not going to equal what you're going to make in the pros. So you have to maximize both of those. You have to maximize your exposure. You have to maximize what pro teams are going to look at you and how they're going to view you. And if you bring in a guy that is a part-time starter, are they a NFL draft prospect? I'm not sure. Like that is kind of what we're holding up. Now that guy can turn into one. And hey, Torre's played some really good ball for Rutgers. He's been a really good defensive scheme, overmatched at times. That defense, obviously, but you could see the individual talent there. Could that bubble up at a place like Penn State? Absolutely. I think it could. But yeah, it's less about the national title. These aren't guys that are 33 years old in the NFL looking for one last shot to sign on the veteran minimum detail or the veteran min to win a national or to win a ring. Like, this is not how that works.
Right? This is their last shot to extend their career. So they need to maximize their last or one of their dwindling years of opportunity to maximize your exposure to the NFL so that those realities can happen. The reality here, Fitz, one last point.
And there's guys that are few and far between of living out a dream, like a Trey Potts, who was a guy that Penn State valued. Like, he, as a third running back, did pretty well when he was in there. Do I look at any of these guys that are on Penn State's commit list in the portal and say that? Not necessarily. I think these guys are looking for exposure, looking for the right kind of exposure. And that's the other thing here. Trevor Pena caught a lot of balls in Syracuse offense last year, but T. Frank, you know this, when you're a hyper spread team that throws a lot of passes, they're going to look at that and be like,
I'm skipping most of them. Yeah.
65 catches in that offense is like 25 at 30 at Penn State. That's kind of how it's not fair. And it's not apples to apples, but that's how they kind of look at it. So when Pena went into the portal, it wasn't so much about looking for the money, did not get $2 million, did not get close to $2 million. But you're looking at a situation that can propel you to the next level, that can make you do the things that they do in pro offenses, that can expose you as a potential draft prospect.
Bang.
And that's kind of what it comes down to. And playing for a winning team, especially when you're Pena and you're from South Jersey, like in your region, in your area where everybody can come watch you play, that matters too.
So we got to get to a couple things before the end of the show. I'm going to make these guys play vibe check. So that's coming up at the end, but we have to get to Fitz's recruiting update because there's a lot to talk about. Lots of commitments here. So let's get to that now. Fitz's recruiting update here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Just a reminder, please subscribe to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, like the video, and of course, if you want to get more detailed information, the in-depth information, the stuff behind the scenes, all of it fast, immediate, sometimes before anybody else knows it, subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com for just $1 for the first week, and then you can decide if you want to join us for a full year. So Friday, Terry Wiggins commits to the Nittany Lions. I know you wrote about him this weekend. What do you think of Terry Wiggins, the latest Penn State commit?
I like Terry Wiggins a lot, and I have for a while now. This is a guy that's got some length there, playing outside linebacker. Penn State is moving toward, they played two box linebackers. They're moving toward more of the outside linebackers, which is kind of the approach under Pry. Manny brought back some of the mics, and then Tom Allen brought back more of the mics, and now all of a sudden you're looking at a team that is a little imbalanced, if we'll say linebacker.
Yeah.
But that's neither here nor there, because this is a class of 2026 and he will not be on campus until next year. So Terry Wiggins, good player. He's got a lot of range. This is a guy that kind of came out of nowhere. Penn State offered him in October. His first offer last year, like bar none, was in August, just as he was in camp as a junior prospect. So in the grand scheme of things, at players at this level, it's kind of late. And I kind of dig it, because that is what we've talked about with some of these guys that are ascending late. And that means that they can continue to ascend until they get to college. Some of these guys come on early and level off. And I think Wiggins does a lot of nice things. He comes off the edge quite a bit. But he does move sideline to sideline. I think he moves really well. I'd love to see him at camp and get some more numbers on him to see what he can do. But he's got that kind of condor wingspan that you look at, and
I love that.
He does some things very, very well as a linebacker. I think he's going to be a will at Penn State. Probably would have been a will in the old defense as well. So you've got some things to work with. Terry Wiggins, he's a 4-star at On3. He's a 4-star on the industry rankings, and as Charles Powers said on our site this weekend, an ascending prospect, which I think is exciting. Went about this very quietly. Visited Penn State 3 or 4 times, and you always kind of felt that it was going to go this way. Went to Syracuse. His offer list probably not as expansive as I thought it would be. He did take an official visit to Kentucky this spring, but as a prospect I like a lot. I've liked him for a long time. He's probably one of those guys we didn't talk about enough during the process, and then all of a sudden that wave comes and he's ready to commit. So big pickup for Penn State to get the linebackers rolling.
Yeah, and the linebackers kept rolling, and you mentioned he's a will linebacker, mobile athlete, runs in space, played DN, but in high school, a lot of times that's just because you're the best athlete. And like we've seen at Penn State, if you need to get after the quarterback, that's the most valuable thing you could do in football on the defensive side of the ball in a general sense when we're talking about football philosophy. But it doesn't mean that they're going all the way that way, because Matthew Lama, formerly Matthew Canoe, very different football player. So what do you think of Matthew Canoe, who committed yesterday? Matthew Lama committed yesterday to the program as the second linebacker in the class.
Yeah, if you checked out for like a week, or maybe you were in the dark and didn't get your power back, and you saw all of a sudden Penn State picks up Matthew Lama, you're wondering what's going on. That's not a guy that's been mentioned. But yeah, Matthew Canoe from Virginia, big kid, 6'3 plus, 220. This is a guy that I've kind of likened to Jesse Luketa. I think he's a forward mover. I think he's a guy that's a Mike / maybe an end at the next level. Probably going to stick at Mike. He's an athletic kid. He does some really good things on film moving forward. And I say that because just there's not a lot of video of him dropping into coverage. And that's an important part of the Jim Knowles defense. It's an important part of any defense, if we're honest here. But you got contrasting styles, complementary pieces in that linebacker class right now. Lama came up to campus in the fall, did not pick up an offer, but came right back and picked up an offer. And this kid can bring the wood. Penn State likes what they've got in like I said, those complementary pieces right there. More of a traditional kind of banger playing between the tackles. Penn State doesn't have a Mike that lines up, head up on the center anymore. But this is a guy that kind of fits that role of what you're looking at in a traditional Mike. So
literally he lines up over the center as a middle linebacker in his defense. Quite a bit.
Every bit of the Mike, he's only missing a neck roll. Like, let's be honest. He's a forward mover, a guy that can get downhill. Like I said, sideline to sideline as he runs the clip that kind of goes sideline to sideline right here. I think he's got some work to do there. Want to see him kind of continue to improve that short area quickness and be there. But he meets people in the hole and they go backwards, which I think is a good thing for linebackers. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I did some full game study on him. I'm going to have the advanced scouting, the film room coming up later this week, if not today, at bluewhiteillustrated.com, just to kind of put some finer points of what I saw there. Really good at reading. I love his patience in the run game. But you're right. Even in situations where he drops into coverage, and he doesn't always attack downhill first, but it is his instinct. As soon as the quarterback thinks about breaking the pocket, twitches in the pocket, he's attacking downhill. So, some coverage, but the role he plays, he very much is just kind of standing in the middle of the defense in zone, waiting for somebody to cross through his zone. So there's a bit of an unknown there, but I think given his personality, his size, his on-film personality, I should say, and his size, all those things totally fit together into what you're talking about as one of those guys. I think it is valuable to have, especially if you're going to play in this defense where it's a lighter box. You're not going to have as many players. Maybe you won't be dropping that extra safety into the box. You probably want to have one guy that's really good at run defense, and so adding another one of those guys does make sense in kind of the long term of this defense. Speaking of the most valuable things you can have, elite coverage, still at the top of everyone's leaderboard. It's top of the NIL depth chart. Brandon Arrington took his official visit to State College this past weekend. I don't know if he's a 5-star off the top of my head. I apologize, but I know he's one of the top corners in the country. So what do you know about how that went? And, give us the primer on official visit season, which officially started this week.
Yeah, usually when these guys come in, I'm not saying they take their phones from them, but they don't really showcase what's going on in the visit. Brandon Arrington had no problem showcasing that on a social level this weekend. We appreciate him doing that, by the way. But he was in town for this weekend. It was the first official visit. He was the only official visitor this weekend, and he's a talented player, man. He's way up there in On3's rankings, number 28 nationally, number 13 in the On3 industry rankings, number 1 cornerback nationally. This is one where Terry Smith's reputation is one that got him in here. And I know that he's very intrigued by what's available to him at Penn State from a developmental standpoint, from a eventually playing time standpoint and things like that. I think that there's a lot going for Penn State in that regard. They're also 2,500, 3,000 miles from home. I think that's going to be an issue. And he's got some pretty good visits here coming on tap. I don't think it was a courtesy visit. I think he was really interested. I think he really is interested in what Penn State brings to mind. But Oregon and USC, both out west, have something to say about that. Texas A&M has a lot to say about everything, and then Alabama, of course. So like you're talking about a guy that's one of the national elite prospects. Penn State views him as such. When going through the cornerback board, still have Dorian Barney and Kari Adams as the top guys, but that's just because we kind of put Arrington in a separate spot, because
he's one of those +1 no matter what, probably across the board.
No matter what. And I just think that the chances of Penn State landing him are not great. So it would kind of a moonshot type deal.
Right.
But like, impressed with what he saw, impressed with Terry Smith, Jim Knowles, all those guys. And I think that Penn State, because of their defensive reputation, because of what they've done in the defensive backfield over the last several years, I think is certainly like put themselves in the mix. And it's not a moral victory to be in the top 5 for a California kid that's a 5-star prospect. Maybe it is. It doesn't win you anything. He's not going to play here because of a moral victory. But at the same time, like, it shows you that there's a little bit more national appeal as Penn State continues to sort of forge itself in the national landscape.
Yeah, especially at these premier positions like corner. I think the guy I was trying to talk about a couple weeks ago, Brian Harris, who eventually went to Georgia, being in the conversation is the first step here. And for people listening on the podcast that can't see what we have here on the YouTube channel, 6'2.5", 180. He is the 13th overall player in the class of 2026. He is a 5-star. In the On3 rankings, he is a 4-star, a high 4-star, 28th overall. That means he'll eventually be a 5-star if he stays there, because we only give out 32 of those 5 stars to represent 32 first-round draft picks in the NFL. But he is a 5-star by ESPN and Rivals. So a guy that is well considered across the board.
And there's differences here. You mentioned Brian Harris coming up from Florida. I mean, Penn State was in on him fairly early, in the sense that, like, he didn't have a big offer list until recently. Alabama offered, a couple other schools offered. That Penn State kind of forged that through. Brandon Arrington's been on the radar forever, and it's a bit different than a guy like Darius Dixon. Darius Dixon was viewed as a guy that maybe, I don't want to say had peaked, but like, there was so many questions about his speed that when it broke down to time, or when it was time to take official visits, it was Penn State, it was Washington. It wasn't the USC and Oregon, which, USC, for everything that for oh boy, how do I say this without,
the perception is very different than the reality there. Seems.
For the results that they've had, like, still to me is way up there, especially for a West Coast kid, because that's the appeal, and that has been there. And they've got, I think, the number 2 or 3 class nationally right now in the 2026 class. So I thought that Penn State did a really good job here, but Finney, somebody mentioned Finney in the chat. Brandon Arrington's kind of just on a different level there, and you know what he's got, because he's a track star. He's in the low 10s in the 100, and again, he's not a 5'7" sprinter. He's 6'2.5", 180. He can really run. He's got all those like dots that you like. When you go through and check the boxes, he's got a lot of those going for him. So going to be a tough one for Penn State to win this one, especially getting him on campus this early as the first official visit. But I mean, he was impressed. I mean, there's not much you can go beyond that.
Yeah. And of course, we'll talk more about this and the reaction, plus official visit season, primer for what's going on in May. All that on the Thursday BWI Live Show. So this is Fitz's recruiting update here. Make sure you like the video. As always, appreciate you checking this out. Now let's get to our next segment here on the show, which is good vibes, bad vibes. It's the vibes check.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Also, I want to apologize to everybody's ears. I actually fixed that, and then somehow the wrong video got into the upload. But either way, I think you get what we're doing here. Good vibes, bad vibes. How you feeling about a couple of Penn State topics? Now, I already set this up, but I'll set this up again here just so we're all clear. Like, the reporting is over. These guys are doing a great job of giving you the facts that they know, and they don't like to speculate. But we all have a gut check, right? We all kind of have a feeling about where things are going. So I just want to give these guys the opportunity to just exhale some thoughts. I know this is great for me, but this is for them. So Nate, I want to start with you. Let's go with this question, this thought. Penn State is the #1 team in the country heading into the 2025 season. They got another. Joel Klatt made them the #1. Ari Wasserman wrote about how Trevor Pena made them the #1 team. There is this consensus, this vibe building. What's your vibe about them being the #1 team in the country?
No.
Look,
I
Got a bad feeling about this. I got a bad feeling about this.
Does anyone? I don't follow the NFL. You follow the NFL, T. Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Are there 1 through 32? I'm sure there are. Of course there are.
Power rankings are. Power rankings sustained me through high school. Absolutely.
I know, but it's just so stupid. It's just.
What are you going to say next? Draft grades are bad? Oh, come on.
Play the games. I don't look. And here's a couple of bottom line issues, right? Until Penn State beats Ohio State, it doesn't matter. None of it. Like what has happened to Ohio State that makes you feel like Ohio State is not in any way the same program that it was, right? I get it. They lost players. I didn't think Will Howard was going to win a national championship. He did. Yeah. Right. You didn't think that Ryan Day was going to win a national championship. He did.
Especially after losing to Michigan at the end of the season. I'm just saying,
I just don't see how Penn State, and here's the problem. It's not something that Penn State asked for. So for me to be like, oh, well, Penn State didn't earn a preseason #1 fantasy stupid pick from whatever, Pete Thamel. Like, no, that's not something that they asked for. It's just not. No, do I think that Penn State is very well positioned to be competitive, make the playoff, and then see what happens? Absolutely. 100%. Do I think that top to bottom, Penn State is like the most stacked team in the country, one that should carry expectations of winning a national championship going into this season? No, I don't think that. Nope. Sorry. Fitz. And maybe I'm too close to it. I don't. I mean, so Fitz, but
I do think that there is a certain. We cover Penn State football, and these guys cover college football, so they also don't have the granular knowledge of each individual team, but they have a wider knowledge of every team. I certainly don't know what's going on at Texas in depth, or at USC, Washington, Oregon. All those different schools that you might have in the conversation here. I apologize. I want to pivot because I want to get to a couple of these questions here.
You should have given me 30 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we can do an extra show. You can come back tomorrow if you want. Penn State is being more selectively aggressive in the portal. Are they going all in for 2025? Trevor Pena, 3 receivers total, going after a linebacker when we maybe thought it was a want, not a need, and now they're pursuing these guys. Are they going all in? Good vibes, bad vibes about what they're doing here in the portal?
Yeah, absolutely they are. I mean, there's absolutely, you look at what Penn State's been able to do or what they're trying to accomplish in certain spots. I mean, this was the question that we had 15 minutes ago when someone said other schools just have spots. Like, great. Penn State's got spots that are lower on the depth chart, which means they're trying to fortify. They're not trying to patch the hole and cover it with something else. They're trying to fortify what it needs for a 15, 16. By next show, I'm going to count how many games there will actually be. I apologize for that. I should do that in math in my head. I'm not a math guy. But yeah, you've got one more year of Drew. You got one more year of Katron. You got one more year of Nick. You've got certain guys on this roster that won't be here next year because they're really good football players. Look at the retention that they did with Zane, with Denai, all these guys that they're bringing back. Yeah, they're absolutely, I think, all in, because you look at the paper sheet of 2026 and you say, well, they're losing a lot. They're probably take a step back. So yeah, Z-Man said it. This is a layup question. Yeah, they're definitely going all in because of what they have right now. Does that mean that they aren't going to win at all? Not necessarily, but they've done what they had to do, and they've had, I think, a really good offseason.
But to the point behind the point here, the point behind the question is they haven't gone all in when they had other opportunities, or you felt like they had the opportunity to be in this position if they were more aggressive here or there. And it feels like now with the current administration, with James Franklin, and this is the moment, and they're not sitting on their hands. They're not saying, okay, this is good enough. Our culture is good. Develop from within. They are attacking, not waiting for a slot receiver to find his way to the top of the depth chart, not waiting for a young linebacker to step up and fully mature into a role where you can play as a third guy. They're going to go and they're going to try and fix the things they can fix. And that has not been the case over the last 5 years or so, or however long it's been since we've gotten the transfer portal and NIL.
Well, there's tangible evidence of how close they were. There were 4 teams left playing last year, and Penn State was one of them. It's not that deep, people. Like, it's not it's not a situation where you're like, all right, well, Texas A&M, for example, is they're 6 guys away. That's a long way away. Like there's a decent bit of examples out there in college football, and I think Penn State, the way they've built this thing is I don't want to call it the crest, because you never want to write off the future, but there's a lot going for Penn State right now, and they've done a lot to fortify that. And I also think that there's situations where, yeah, you can go all in, and if any of those, like Pena shows up and he's not what you thought he was, you put the guy in that's the best player. Like, not necessarily because you're bringing him in from the portal, but if he gets, I'm not suggesting anybody on the roster is better, but like they're filling those gaps with the best players available. And I think that that's something that you can look at the culture, you can look at the roster building and the long, slow build. And this is kind of what it's been moving toward.
If you have an opinion, good vibes or bad vibes, you want to put them in the chat, or you want to put them here replying to the video. What do you think of these questions? Is Penn State the number 1 team heading into the 2025 season? Do you got good vibes or bad vibes about that? One last question. This is for both of you. And the shot clock is on, Nate Bauer. Penn State's defense will be good in 2025. And I'm not going to define what good is. You've got to, in your mind, when I say good, you say
yes.
All right. There we go. I wanted to give you a layup. I wanted you to give the opportunity to be the good guy, not always have to give the bad news.
Look, they're paying Jim Knowles to have a very, very good defense this season. The expectation is for a very good defense this season. And yes, that does not eliminate the nuance of it will be better in year 2 than it is in year 1. It does not eliminate the nuance of Abdul Carter is a freak and really, really good at playing football, who erases any other deficiencies, which is the type of player they need on the offensive side of the ball. But I digress. They will still be very good at defense because they have players who are very good at defense and a coordinator who can put them in the right spots.
Fitz, what do you think? Good vibes, bad vibes?
Good vibes, with the caveat, as always, that Penn State's been great to elite on defense the last several years. And I don't know that they've got the personnel across the board, a lot across, I would say 22 guys across the 2 deep, to sort of hold up to the standard where they've been. I mean, we saw it last year with Penn State giving up touchdowns on its first drive and people setting the world alight. Like the expectations were rightfully out of place because of how good that defense was, especially under Manny. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now. So you look at what Penn State has given up in the past, and like the stretch of defense is as good as it's been since the 80s. Like that has been very, very good. And I do think that Jim Knowles is a better defensive coordinator than Tom Allen, like flatly. And I think that will help. But you look at the depth and you look at the long season that we've talked about, and yeah, there's some things that creep up on you. So we will see what happens. And I was just thinking about this morning, the national title game, Notre Dame, Ohio State, the first drive, Ohio State gives up a touchdown with Notre Dame just basically running the single wing with Riley Leonard, which knocked him out, but whatever. And just thinking about how that's going to go this year for Penn State, when these guys, every defensive coordinator I've ever seen, like, you look at the first drive as a feeling out period, and sometimes there's points scored off of that. And how many games have we seen Penn State give up a field goal, a touchdown on the first drive, and then all of a sudden maybe a touchdown the rest of the game, something like that? And I think Jim Knowles fits in that category. So I'm very excited for in-game threads is what I'm saying.
And of course, those are accessed at bluewhiteillustrated.com during the regular season, but the message board and threads are available to you whenever you subscribe. So check it out. We appreciate you being here. I'm Thomas Frank Carr for Nate Bauer and Sean Fitz. We'll be back tomorrow, or when breaking news happens. It's that time of year where all kinds of things could happen with commitments. Great time to subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Like the video. Appreciate you. We'll see you later.